This is a 20-year-old jade plant. I intend to train it into a bonsai, but that's something that I'm going to do gradually. In this video, I'm going to repot it and do a bit of pruning. This large jade tree is special to me because it belonged to my grandparents. Sadly, they are both gone, but they passed on their love for plants as part of their legacy to me, and now I get to care for this big old jade plant as a keepsake to remember them by. I only brought it home a couple of months ago, but I haven't been able to find a place where it could get sufficient light. After setting up the grow tent a few weeks ago, I moved it here. However, because it's the tallest plant in the tent, with its canopy being closer to the grow light, it might now be getting too much light. The red pigmentation that started to appear on the leaves and stems suggests excessive light levels. So repotting it in a lower pot should help by lowering the level of the canopy. However, the main reason for repotting is that this jade tree hasn't been repotted for a long time. And I think it will enjoy exchanging this clay soil for something that's a bit better draining. Before taking it out of the pot, I'm going to prune the young shoots growing lower on the trunks of the jade, as well as clean up all the fallen branches and leaves from around the base. This has exposed the mature looking lower trunk and will make it easier to take the jade out of the pot. Next, I'm going to do some light pruning just to remove drooping branches, those that are blocking light by crossing other branches, and the dead ones. There is one bad case of crossing branches here, but I'm not going to do anything about it just yet. Not until I find out if there are several individual plants here, or if they are all coming from the common trunk hidden below the ground. The jade was growing with this side against the wall, so most of the branches are oriented this way as they were reaching for light. This is something that will have to be corrected in the future, but for now I'm mainly going to stick to repotting. So let's get this jade out of the pot. I started by using my root rake for removing the old soil, but it didn't do too well against the hard clay soil. It was breaking off the fragile roots, and the progress was slow. So it soon became apparent that I needed something more efficient, something like a bamboo chopstick. A bag of pine bark acted as a cushion to prevent breaking branches while working on the soil removal. And here is what I got after almost an hour of work. The two main trunks seem to be joined somewhere around here, so they are both part of the same plant. There's still some soil left which I cannot remove without doing more damage to the already meager root system, so I decided to wash off the remaining soil, especially since the jade hasn't been watered in a while and it's getting dehydrated. This is how it looks after washing the roots. The smaller trunk is clearly a branch growing off the side of the bigger trunk, so I'm going to keep them attached like this and grow the jade as a twin trunk. Next, I'm going to remove anything growing between the two main trunks and this large branch here growing off the side of the secondary trunk, mainly because it starts too low and grows too close and parallel to the other trunk. I'm also going to remove this top here, since I don't want anything growing in this direction crossing the main trunk. I'm using my precision craft knife to make the cut flush with the trunk, as jades will not callus over like normal trees. Here's another view with the two main trunks and the location of the third, smaller one, which I intend to remove. This is the one that causes the branch overlapping I showed you earlier. So it's going to come off. And there we go, a nice big cutting for a future project. And this is how it looks after removing the big branch. Since the cut point will be below the soil level, I'm going to let it dry out before proceeding with the potting. 24 hours later, the cut wounds have dried up quite a bit. I'm going to apply some cinnamon on all cuts as a natural antifungal and drying agent. This is the pot I'm going to plant the tree in. Since the jade is top heavy, I'm going to have to tie it to the pot, but since it has a root system which is too compact and fragile and a trunk that scars easily, I'm not going to use wire. Instead, I'm going to tie it to the rim of the pot using some string. So let's get the pot prepared. I'm using 2 pieces of hemp string to make a loop. The loop goes around the pot like this, and the free ends of the strings will be used to tie down the tree. I'm placing the tree roughly in the center of the pot, since I'm not really concerned with composition at this point. And then I start adding the soil, which is a mix of lava rock, pumice and a bit of perlite. I opted for this mix because it offers good drainage and provides enough weight to keep the tree from falling over. Once the jade plant was standing on its own, it was time to make a slight adjustment. The secondary trunk is leaning away from the main trunk due to the weight of the canopy, so I'm going to bring it into a more vertical position. I think this looks a bit better than before. I'm using some pieces of rubber that I prepared in advance to protect the places where the trunk will come into contact with the tie-down string. A loop in one of the strings will help you add some tension when tying down the tree. Here are the steps. Pass one string through a V in the trunk, make a loop in the other string using an overhand knot, pass the first string through the loop, pull to tension, and finally pinch the tension string while you secure it with a knot. With the tree secured to the pot, it's time to fill in the rest of the soil. And now that the soil level is established, I can clean up all the knots and roots from the base of the jade. I'm not going to water it for at least a week. This will allow the roots some time to heal from the damage caused by repotting. The repotting is done now, but clearly there's a lot more work to do to establish a clean and natural looking branch structure. For example, this large branch that is growing from one side of the main trunk and crossing over to the other side will need to be removed. Other branches like these are getting too long and starting to droop. So I'll have to give it a thorough pruning, but I'm not going to do this until spring. For now, I'll let it recover from repotting and gain vigor so that it will respond well to pruning. By the way, did you notice it doesn't look like it's leaning anymore? And this was just from repotting it. If you have any thoughts, suggestions or questions, please leave them in the comment section below. Thank you for watching. I'm Stefan and I'll see you in the next Odd Bonsai video.